You are listening to the Young Black Travelers podcast, Black voices conversing in experiential travel, dedicated to a global community of travelers. So be bold, be inspired, be spontaneous. We are YBT.
Everyone, this is your girl Chrisanne, back by popular demand, and I am in another episode of Young Black Travelers. Now, this is very dear to my heart, and I can't wait to introduce you to our guest for today. So, I'm going to let the guest introduce herself to our listeners and our watchers.
Good day, everyone. My name is Jonelle Rocke, and I'm really happy to be here. Chrisanne, thank you so much for inviting me to just kick back and have some fun with you and your audience. A little bit about me. I am from Brooklyn, New York. I am a financial coach and I have a company called Generation Wealth, we work with youth and adults to help them understand how to implement principles to become financially independent.
Now, that's very important in today's age because who doesn't talk about money, right? Like, money is in everyone's minds from young, but in different stages, it just reveals you in different ways. And travel, I guess, is no less that topic where money is always in the forefront of things.
Yes.
But dive into a little bit of like, why did you start Generation Wealth in the first place?
Well, I want to say when I was about 18 years old, I read a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which you're probably very familiar with. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
the most popular personal finance books probably in the world. And I was still in high school, but after reading that book, it like solidified for me that I was not going to work a normal 9 to 5 job for the rest of my life. I knew I wanted to be like the rich dad. So a series of events took place on my journey to financial independence. So I graduated high school. I'm from a Caribbean background. My mom is from Trinidad. My father's Jamaican.
Oof,
And
what
my
a
maternal grandmother,
diabolical duo, by the way. Woof.
every now and then when they get together, they get along. And then, you make something beautiful.
Phew.
Cute.
Oh.
And then my maternal grandmother, she's from Barbados. And so my maternal grandmother and my mom actually raised me. And, if you are of Caribbean descent, then you know
Mm-hmm.
that the rule is to go to school, get good grades, and get a good job.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that. I went to school. I went to school in New York City public schools from K through 12, graduated on a scholarship to New York University, studied, got my degree, graduated summa cum laude, and then I became a teacher at my old elementary school. And by all means, it's like, okay, I'm a success. But I kept thinking about what I read in that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And one of the things that Kiyosaki talks about is leveraging the power of real estate to build wealth. So, my cousin, she told me about a friend of her husband who was in the real estate game and doing good things. So, I was like, well, cousin, I trust you, so let's do this. So, rule number one, whenever you go into business with someone, treat it like a marriage and make sure you do your due diligence in researching, and learning about them before you get into the covenant contract. I did not do that. So, we went about myself and my cousin's husband buying properties in New Jersey. Before you knew it, I had 4 properties, and this family friend, we'll call him John.
Okay.
He was the one that was, supposed to manage the properties, manage the fixing up of the properties, getting tenants in there, and he did it for a little while, and then he didn't. Then he disappeared.
Oof.
And so I didn't have a car back then. So I live in Brooklyn. I would have to take like 2 trains and a bus to East Orange, New Jersey, just to see what's going on with my properties. Every time I went, there were tickets. I had to go to court. It was
Wow.
such a nightmare. I couldn't keep up with it. And so I ended up losing all 4 properties.
Wow.
So I
Wow.
had I had a little bit of student loan debt, some credit card debt, and then added $1.3 million in real estate debt to that. It was the most difficult season of my life. I mean, imagine, I go and I tell my pastors what's going on, and they're like, wow.
Oof.
They're like, well, we can't even imagine what you're going through, but we're going to pray for you.
I mean, at that point, what can you do? You just pray for you. That's it. Wow.
And it really, it was very difficult, but I will say that, out of a, a test comes a testimony.
That's
And I
right.
think, if I had to go through this again, if I had to choose between getting an MBA or going through the experience that I did, I would choose the experience because
Mm,
I learned so much, and I focused on the debt that I could handle, which was the credit card and the student loan debt.
mm.
And that took about so all of this was going on around 2008, right? So you had that real estate
Okay.
bubble going on.
Yeah.
And I would say maybe it was the best time in history for me to go through this real estate crisis, because at the time
Hmm.
there really was no, I think the government was looking at the banks like, how could
Yeah.
you give $1.3 million in loans to a teacher making just over $40,000 a year?
Impressive though.
Right. That's, yeah, like that would never happen today. So, long story short, once I
Hmm.
finished paying off my student loans, I worked up enough, I would say, confidence to check my credit report again, because it
Mm.
was in the toilet before. It was about 400. And then when I checked it,
Wow.
this was in about 2012, it was over 700.
Wow. Okay.
And
Wow.
I was like, wait, what happened? And all of those real estate properties were all of a sudden in good standing on my credit report.
Mm.
And so,
Wow.
I think what happened at that point, the banks, they repossessed the properties. So they got the asset back.
Hmm.
And they had to let me off the hook for the debt, considering them extending that loan
Mm.
to me and not, really doing their due diligence in terms of the how I would be able to manage that. Back in 2007
Wow.
and 2008, this is what was happening.
Hmm.
And so now banks, of course, they're a lot more stringent, and they do their due diligence to make sure that they are lending responsibly. But I
Mm.
really think it was a miracle
That is a
for
miracle.
me.
Wow.
But I learned so many lessons. And one thing I was very sure about at the end of that experience was that if I had received really focused instruction anytime in school about how to
Mm.
manage my money responsibly, I'm sure I would have made different choices.
Mm.
If you are familiar with the New York City school system, by the time you get to high school, you're required to take 3 years of math that, unless you go into engineering or maybe architecture,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
or
true.
any math heavy fields, you probably will never use this math in life,
Mm.
right? But imagine if one of those years could just be personal finance math. I
Mm.
think it would make a huge difference in how people handle their money in adulthood.
Oh, it'll make a world of difference.
Yeah,
Empowerment galore
absolutely.
for people, especially in a
Yeah,
capitalistic society, is driven by how
yeah.
much capital you have. So money, learning about money and the health of it is vital for especially American society at large.
I
Uh,
think also understanding, like, when I think about the work that I do with young people and their families, at Generational Wealth, we teach young people about becoming financially independent. So it's
mm,
not just about going through the motions, about managing your money and budgeting, because you want to get off the hamster wheel,
right.
right? And so becoming financially independent, and that's what I was really looking and working towards. I think even when I went into buying those houses, it was always about becoming
Mm-hmm.
financially independent, and doing that by making sure, well, first let me define financial independence. So we
Mm-hmm.
define it at Generational Wealth as when you have enough passive income that meets and eventually exceeds your monthly expenses.
Mm,
So we teach young people about, even at the age of like 14, 15, 16, what are some passive income producing assets that you can start investing in now. So by the time you're 25, 30, 35,
Mm-hmm.
you have money working for you, number one, and you'll have an income that you don't have to get up in the morning and go work for. And that frees up your time for you to do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want, with whoever you want.
Wow. Well, that's very important because I guess our generations and before were taught that you achieve that at 65. So it's nice that generation wealth does teach that early so that you can achieve financial independence while you're young. It doesn't have to be later
Exactly.
on in life with all the obstacles that can come your way. But this is a great introduction to Generation Wealth. Of course, we'll share the handles at the end of this episode, so stay tuned on how you can connect with her. And after our break, we're going to go into the main conversation on how this apply to travel. Of course, it does,
Mhm.
but we're going to talk a little bit deeper as to how it pertains to you and the tools that this financial coach, Jonelle, can share with you to better your travel journey. So stay tuned. We're back, everyone. We are back at this great episode talking about financial health and travel with Jonelle, financial coach of Generation Wealth. So you talked a lot about your financial journey, rather, um, and kind of touch about how it shaped your relationship. But I want you to go more in depth about how exactly it did shape your relationship with money today.
Yeah. Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in a Caribbean home. My family did not have a lot of money. Just my grandmother, she was a housekeeper, and my mom, she didn't work all the time because she has a vision disability.
Mm,
So sometimes she would work, but others not. So it was not consistent. So my grandma was the breadwinner, and she did not make a lot of money. So she was, she would always complain about things like the light being on too long.
mm.
Or this was before cell phones. I'm dating myself.
Oh
But
gosh, that's okay.
we would use like landlines, right?
Mm,
And when you use a landline, back then they would charge you by the minute.
mm-hmm.
And so, like, I was in high school and middle school, and I want to talk to my friends, and she would like catch me on the phone and like flip out. So, very, very early in my life, I realized, number one, that money is scarce and there's not enough of it to go around. And two, when you do have, you need to make sure that you pay bills. And then
Mm.
my mom, on the other hand, she didn't manage the bills. So when she did get money, she would like go on Flatbush Avenue and go shopping.
I probably know the
So,
exact shop. It must have been Bobby's. Okay.
oh no, she actually, she used to go to
Oh,
Rainbow
okay.
on
Yeah.
like
Okay.
Tilden and Flatbush,
Yeah.
and would go like to those stores on the strip. And my mom, like, she really liked nice clothes and stuff.
For
This
anyone,
was
by
back
the
then.
way, who does not know, like in New York,
Oh,
there's Brooklyn. All the Caribbean people go to Rainbow or Bobby's or some discount store. So that's a little context. That's why I got a little
yes.
excited. Yes.
Yes, like Flatbush Avenue was it. And so, we would go, and she would take me, right? And so we would eat first. We would have something to eat, and then we would go shopping. So I'm like,
Mm,
okay. I was like, so money, there's not enough of it to go around. Two, when you have it, you got to pay bills. And then if there's anything left over, you go shopping.
mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. Good. So, and that is how my relationship, that's what it was like.
Wow.
And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, okay, I want to do this investment thing, but I didn't really have like, mentors. And so as a matter of fact, those properties, I got them for $0 down, right? So I didn't put
Wow.
any money down, right? So I was like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to put any money down, and I'm going to have properties, sign me up.
Of course. Of course.
So I didn't, and I can't say that my relationship with money even changed while I was going through all of that. or before, even when I was acquiring the properties. I think, as I was going through the test and losing them, then I realized like, oh my gosh, I got to get it together. At this time, I also had credit card debt. I had studied abroad for 1 year in college. And so I used credit cards to kind of keep me afloat. Being in a foreign country for a year, a family who couldn't really send money like that, I did use my credit card. I maxed it out. By the time I came back, I had to go through like, a credit consolidation so that I could even pay that card off. Then I really had to rethink like how I am with money. And at that time, I started going to church more, and I started learning about proverbs and like, the borrower is slave to the lender. I'm like, I don't want to be anybody's slave. And it's like, you should aim to owe no man anything but to love them. I'm like, oh my gosh, what world is this? And so I had to relearn how to think about money, what it's for, what does it mean to me. And I would say like now I don't think about money as something that's scarce, but I think about it as something that's very abundant. There's enough to go around for everybody. But I don't think about money as a scarce thing. It's something where there's an abundant amount of wealth, not just money, but wealth to go around. I know that money is a tool to get me a lifestyle and to buy my time back. So like that is a big thing for me. For me, is using money to buy my time back, because my time is really my most important asset. I can never get my time back.
Wow.
Ever.
But
if I can use money to get time back, then that's what I'm gonna do. So for me now, money is not for paying bills and going shopping. That's not the main purpose. But of course, there are responsibilities that come with living, right? Is paying your bills. But I need to use my money to buy my time back. And I'm also very mindful about how I speak about money, because from a spiritual perspective, our words have energy and words have creative power. So if you're walking around saying I'm broke, I don't have no money, I'll never be rich, guess what? You have what you say. You will be broke. You'll never have money. And that's not because the world is against you. It's because you've spoken into existence. So even if I don't see it in my bank account, I remember for years, I was not seeing the money in my bank account, but I learned, I was like, I'm never going to say I'm broke. Now I say I'll never be broke another day in my life.
Wow. What a transition. Like you went from, correct me, that it's from scarcity, that it's only for bills, and then the rest is shopping, to it's abundance. I'm never broke. It's
never broke.
Buying my time back is my goal. It's not just bills and shopping for now, but buying my time for my future self. That's very important to learn from, even as young as you can. Even if taxes and stuff doesn't uphold to you, or life or bills, that's a mindset to start with, so that when you go through those things, you are mentally prepared, so that you don't freak out. You don't do um, decisions that maybe if you had a better mindset, you would approach it differently, right? So thank you for sharing that. I'm guilty of that as well. Sometimes I have to catch myself, because it's just so easy. Sometimes it's company too. Another day for another day, where you're just used to a community, like you said, Caribbean, have that same mindset. We live the same lives pretty much. If we all know they're going to Bobby to discount, we all had that same household of like used to hearing scarcity all the time. And probably our community, the Black community, hear that a lot throughout the day, that it's just like we're just always behind everyone. So we have to get what we can. We have to do what we can to just get out and just survive, and not thinking about how can I build myself up to thrive. But yeah, I'm guilty of that even when I know, right? And that's the crazy part about relearning, right? So I know there's things that would trigger, even if you're building up, that would trigger that motion of scarcity. And the biggest trend right now is the travel cards. Now, travel cards, there's travel cards that have been coming out lately. Um, I guess because pandemic is done, the banks all of a sudden has all these credit cards coming out. Not bad. and a lot of them has really good perks. But I know that for some who may be on a limbo of how to financially grow, especially the youth, um, it's just they don't know how to approach it. So there is a lot of talk with travel cards and having it be a desire to travel more. So I'm wondering what's your take on stuff like travel cards? Like, is it a positive? Is it a negative? Should we be cautious about it? What say ye?
Travel credit cards. All right.
Mhm.
So here's what I will say. I'm going to start with the positive. I
Okay.
think that they can be a really great tool to get travel perks for,
Mhm.
low cost flights, hotel stays, credits for travel related purposes. I'll talk, for me personally, within, I would say the last year, like 3 weeks ago, I traveled to Iceland. My flight to Iceland only cost me $91. That's
Wow.
because I was able to redeem my points for
Hmm.
travel credit. Last year, I flew to Barbados, Trinidad, and Atlanta for free. I didn't pay for any
Wow.
of those flights, round trip.
Wow.
So, and that was all because of my credit card points.
Mm.
Now, if I'd say that the benefits of a travel credit card are a no-brainer
Of
if
course. Mm.
if
If.
you pay off the entire balance of your credit cards religiously every month. If you
Mhm.
carry a balance on your cards, then you're not saving anything at all. I'm going to say that again. If you
Okay.
carry a balance on your credit cards, you are not saving anything at all. And
Mhm.
that's because the rate at which they pay you back points and rewards is not the same rate of which you're paying interest.
Mm.
So the average rate on a credit card could be anywhere between 15 to 27%. All right, so
Mhm.
let's just say 20%.
Yes.
And then your points that you're getting back, let's be generous and say it's 5%.
Mhm.
So if you make $100 purchase, you make the minimum payment of, I don't know, $10, and you're paying 20% interest on that,
Mm.
right? That's like $18.
Mhm.
And then you're getting 5%, right,
Mhm.
in reward. So 5% of $200, what is that? A dollar?
Well, yeah, 100, I guess it would be like 5.
1%. Oh wait, what? five
Well,
dollars? Well, 1% of $100
it would
is
be
$1. So it'd be
$1.
$5.
Yeah, it'd be
Right. So
$5.
5% would be $5.
Mhm.
So you're paying like $20 in interest and then $5 in rewards. Make the math ain't mathin'.
Right.
No.
That's true.
So I would say, and the challenge here with this is that 1 in 4 Americans pay off their entire balance each month. So you
Mm.
line up 4 people, only one of them are paying off the entire balance every month. The
Mm.
other three, they're carrying a balance.
Mm.
So I'd say if you're not paying off your credit card balance in full each month, then you're better off just saving money for travel, even if you don't know where you're going to go yet. Open up a high yield savings account and just put the money in there.
Yeah. That sounds
Mhm.
reasonable. At least it's growing somewhere. So when you are ready, you have the funds to actually do it and not worry about can I afford it? Because you already put
Yeah.
your future self in the forefront, like you said, abundance, right? But that's good to note. So take notes. Um, Travel cards are great if you pay off the balance every month. And if you can't, high yield saving accounts would be your best friend for now. Um, but at least, you're showing that there is always options out there, right? And I know maybe young Black travelers out there maybe feel financially stuck. So even hearing that there are options, they're still like, uh, I don't know if it's for me. Maybe because, okay, maybe I could do that. I could afford to get out of the state or next door, but I can't have this luxurious Maldives with that. Like I can't go to places where I see in social media. So I know that there's many young Black travelers that may be feeling stuck because of social media pressuring certain lifestyles that they may not be able to afford right now. So how would you, as a financial advisor or financial coach
Oh,
rather,
financial coach.
yes, I
Yes.
have to be careful. Can't
Yeah.
say, can't
That's
throw
right.
out terms. Financial coach. How would you address such social pressures?
Well, first, I would say if we're looking at social media, I'm going to say to you right now that all that glitters isn't gold.
Mm.
And if you would allow me to, I want to share some statistics with you.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So 65% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Mm.
So that means that 2 out of every 3 people that you see showing off their lifestyle on social media are living paycheck to paycheck.
Out of every 3 friend, even paycheck to paycheck.
Yes, paycheck to paycheck.
Mm.
37% of Americans can't afford a $400 emergency.
Mm.
So that's 1 out of every 3 people that you might look at who are out there living their best life somewhere in another country. They can't pay for a $400 emergency,
Mm.
which means that if they are paying for this trip, how do you think they're paying for it?
Credit card,
Credit card.
usually.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. 1 in 4 Americans have less than $1,000 in savings.
Mm.
And if you're speaking of credit cards, I don't know if you've seen this, but there was a few articles that came out that reported that credit card debt has just hit an all-time high. So we're
Wow.
at now $1.2 trillion in
Woo.
credit card debt.
Wow.
That's a lot of zeros. And if I think I was looking at, I was reading this article and looking to see, well, what does that mean for, every American? So technically, I mean, not this American, not me,
Mm. Not the abundant
but
one.
that would average to about $10,000 in credit card debt for each American.
Wow. Oof.
So people are out here paying for trips that they can't afford, right, on credit cards, and then they come back and then they have to deal with the burden of getting rid of this debt. And so I would say that if you are looking at social media and you're feeling that pressure, I want you to think and ask yourself, like, I wonder if this person might be living paycheck to paycheck. I wonder, can this person afford a $400 emergency? Do they have $1,000 in the bank saved? Just do they have savings? I wonder how they're paying for this trip. And chances are, I'm not saying all, but the very large percentage of those people they don't have it like that. Okay, there's a movie that I would recommend that you watch. It's called The Joneses.
Okay.
And it came out in 2010, so it was really like before like social media really like blew up like that. But the way that this movie talks about how people look at what other people have in order to keep up with them, and then it just leads to total ruin. It's just a reminder of how you have to just set your goals and stay in your lane. So what I would say, how you could kind of overcome those kinds of pressures is, one, commit to developing the right mindset about money, and also developing and defining what you want your relationship with money to be. So that comes with, if you're listening to this podcast right now, that's you. You're already, I'm sure, starting to think a little differently about how you manage your finances based on what we've been talking about. There's some books I'd recommend. There's a book called Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey. I mean, I'm not like a huge fan of him, but he does have some really good strategies that I would recommend. Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. That's a great book to actually listen to.
That is a good book, actually. Yes.
Yeah. Did you listen to it?
I listened to it long ago. I need to re-listen to it after this episode. But it was a good book.
It's a few hours, but it's a really great book. He gives a lot of tips from some of the, wealthiest and most experienced money managers in the world. And there's a book, one of my favorite books is called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. That's a really great book. And there's a book that just came out. I have not read it yet, but I listen to these guys all the time on Earn Your Leisure. They just wrote a book called You Deserve to Be Rich. And so I would read that. I would recommend that book because I recommend their podcast. Listen to their podcast, Earn Your Leisure.
Listen to their podcast. Listen to this podcast and listen to their podcast.
Right? Yes, if you want to learn about money and how to really do it right. And these are 2 brothers from Westchester. Not brothers, I'm not like related brothers, but 2 Black guys from Westchester. And they really, they're the real deal.
The real
Hmm.
deal. Okay, so there's a lot of tips that are happening, and we're gonna have in the show notes for those. But just to empower you that if you do feel that way, the statistics will help on grounding what
Yes.
seems to be glitterized on social media. But then other people are like, oh, okay, well, I mean, first of all, I'm not on social media or whatever. They'll give another excuse like, okay, but systematically, I'm still behind. I could do all this, but because I'm already in
Mm-hmm.
this community that's already behind in so much in society at large, like, okay, I'll do all these things, but my fair counterpoint already has the edge in and having the money and having it
Mm-hmm.
generational. Like they already have the edge over me in terms of travel because they don't have to do all this and figure all this out. So there are other myths where it's like travel is just for the wealthy. Travel is not for me. Travel, they probably see travel as just international. It's not for me. Maybe I'll go to another state and that's all I could achieve. So, how do you challenge that idea that travel is only for the wealthy? And what advice would you give to our listeners and watchers, our young Black travelers, trying to make travel more accessible for them?
Yeah. So I think that's a really good question. Number one, that is definitely a myth. Travel should be accessible to everyone. I personally believe that healthcare companies should finance at least one vacation every year as a form of preventative
Amen.
healthcare. Like, if somebody else comes out and say that, just know that you heard it first here, okay? Because think about how you feel when you come back from a vacation.
Mm,
And you come back to work, you're clearer, you're relaxed, you're less stressed, you're more productive. So imagine if you could count on your job financing one vacation per year through your health insurance.
mm.
Yeah.
Changes lives.
So yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
And I think, if you're a aspiring globetrotter and, this is what you want to travel, but you may not see the finances yet, you need to remember that number one, money is energy
mm,
and it is available in abundance, and you have to really learn how to change the way you think so that you can attract it.
mm,
Okay. So I would say number one, you have to prioritize it. Okay. Now, not, of course, not above food and shelter and,
mm,
paying your bills, not, ignoring your responsibilities, but you have to prioritize travel. If you want to travel, you got to prioritize it.
mm,
And you prioritize it when whatever you focus on expands. So for me, what that looks like, I save money specifically for travel. Like,
mm,
I may not even know where I'm going yet, but
mm,
I make sure that I'm putting money aside for travel. Now, you may not be able to put a whole lot. If it's $10 a week, well, that's $40 a month,
mm,
right? That's $520 for the year.
mm.
$520 can get you somewhere.
Oh, yes. Half of that could get you
Okay?
somewhere. Okay.
Exactly.
Yes.
So you definitely need to prioritize it and you need to be consistent in putting money away for that purpose. I'm big on high yield savings accounts for short term goals, right? Because you will get more than if you left it in a traditional savings account.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, especially if you are not, that you may not have the discipline with credit cards. High yield savings accounts now are offering, 3 to 4% on money that
Yes.
you put in.
Yes.
So
See, and I've seen that. Like it used to be 2%. I mean,
yeah,
some were kind of three, but there I see more of them increasing.
yes, yes. And the
Lately.
interest rates have a lot to do with that,
Mm.
but you can still get into a high yield savings account at 3 to 4%. That's a lot more than what you're getting. I don't know if you ever looked at your checking account or your savings account at a traditional bank and you see, oh, I got an interest of one whole penny. Like,
Whoop
all
de
right,
doo. What can
so
I buy? Air.
exactly. So high yield savings account is definitely going to be a bit more lucrative and giving you a
Mm-hmm.
bit of interest, right? And of course, this is not to be keeping your money in here for years and years, right? When you're looking at long-term savings, that you need an investing strategy. But this is, you're gonna have this money here, you're gonna use it for a trip at the end of the year or something.
Mm.
And then now you have to start manifesting it. And this is
Mm-hmm.
the fun part, right? So you choose a place, like where do you want to go? And I don't want you to think about money so much, just where do you want to go?
Mm.
And then you start to imagine, and you have to become as detailed as possible. Start
Mm.
planning your trip, right? So
Mm.
envision yourself there. Do a travel meditation, like put on some meditation music that maybe reminds you of the place where you're going, and see yourself there. If you're going to Jamaica, right? Like see yourself walking on the white sand in Jamaica. See yourself sipping on a Bob Marley mixed drink. See yourself eating that jerk chicken. See yourself there. Feel it.
Mm.
So you want to feel the experience because that's what makes it real. And then you
Mm.
want, as you imagine it, start thinking or even writing down, like, how are you going to get there? Where are you going to stay? What are you going to eat? What
Mm.
kind of excursions are you going to do when you're there? Right? And start writing that down. And then you look at, okay, this is how much money I plan to have by this time. This is where I'm going. And then you're going to fit it into your budget.
Mm. Wow.
You start small, and you don't have to go far to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so no, you may not be able to go to the Seychelles Islands, right? But you can go to South Beach, Miami. And I'm telling you, the sand is white, the water is
Yeah.
beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
and the strip is happening,
Yeah.
right? And so you can start small and have that experience, and then you just start expanding from there.
Yeah. And sometimes the wealthier persons are doing those same things. People think that the wealthy are just out there doing outrageous things like Ocean Gate, but maybe too soon to say Ocean Gate.
And actually, I love that you bring up wealthy people, because we have a perception of what wealthy people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I promise you that the average millionaire in the United States, they are not taking 6, 7, 8, 9 lavish
Mm.
trips a year.
Yeah.
They're not doing that,
Mm.
right? That's a lot of, and I'm not necessarily saying that trips, because I do believe that travel adds a value to your life that really cannot be quantified in money.
Mm-hmm.
I've traveled. I haven't really shared much about my travel story,
Mm.
but I've traveled to over 25 countries,
Mm.
and I my very first transatlantic trip was to Ghana, and I
Mm.
was 18 years old.
Wow.
And I was by myself. So I was a solo traveler before solo
Hey,
travel was
hi.
even a hashtag, right?
Hashtag female
um,
soul travelers. Yes.
Right, exactly. I lived in a foreign country when I was in college, so I am very familiar with travel and the experience and what it can do for your life. It has framed, the way I see and think about things, how I engage with people. Um, but I'll never allow my love for travel to trump financial peace.
Mm. That's very important to note that it never trumps financial peace because people have their own assumptions on how people even go about travel,
Yeah,
and how you should think about travel and
yeah.
and perceive their own value based off of how they are able to travel. They'll think, okay, I can't reach that because the wealthy do that,
Mm.
and that's what wealthy people do. And I'm not wealthy, so therefore I'm only stuck to this and that and the third. And
Yeah, and even like
mhm,
not that, even saying you're not wealthy, there you go. You are
right,
cutting off abundance from your life,
right,
right? You just because you don't see it doesn't mean you're not wealthy. So
right.
you don't see the wind, but does that mean that the wind doesn't exist?
Well, of course it's this.
Because we can see the effect that it has on the things around us. So you have to believe that you're wealthy before you see it.
Mm.
And I don't want to, I don't want to get churchy up in here, but
Oh,
I could.
amen. Pass the.
I'm just saying
Mm-hmm,
that you come from greatness. The very fact that you are here, you are great. You had to
mm-hmm,
defy a lot of odds to be here. And so you are wealthy. And the sooner you start to believe that, the sooner you'll start to see things shift in your life.
Mm. So it always goes back to mindset. Which, if you have a
Yes.
mind as young as a kid, you have a mind too. You don't have bills, you don't have taxes. If you have a mind, you have a you have the abundance. You could tap into that. And if you're able to tap into that, then you could start planning for that in ways where you could manifest and have that come true. And
Yep.
it's good to have it from young where again, the trials of life is not on you imposed on you because of your age. You have a little
Yep.
bit more of a freedom to start exploring what
Mm-hmm.
mindset I would need to be a good traveler that trumps financial peace even above traveling, which I think
I
that
love
is
that
very
you bring
important.
up like kids, because I think kids are the greatest. They're the best. They have like
Of course.
they don't think about those things. They have an imagination to create whatever world they want to create, and it's
Mhm.
real for them.
Mhm.
We need to be more like kids.
We do, and we try. We're trying to heal as we're talking about this. My inner child is healing, and as it's healing,
Yes.
I'm able to see and be like, okay, the real child here can learn something through my healing as an inner child. So, as young Black childs who are older, we're healing our mindsets about money. We're also
Yes.
able to partake to those who are kids themselves right now instead of needing to re-heal the inner child. They could just have it as kids right now, as they could explore, and the sooner the better. Okay, so you have the mindset. You put your high you'll see savings account if you can't get the credit card. You have all these tools, and okay, I'm ready to go. Is there any strategies or habits or tools that you suggest our listeners and watchers to start incorporating if they want to build financial peace and thus travel
Okay.
well?
All right. So, there are some things I would recommend. So, if you're looking at your budget and you have more months left at the end than money, but you're like, I want to travel, there are clearly some adjustments that you want to start thinking about. Okay. So if, for example, let's say that you have some debt. All right.
Mm-hmm.
We already looked at some of those stats. So you're probably like, okay, I don't want to be the person on the trip that doesn't have $400 to cover an emergency. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to be the person on the trip that doesn't have, at least $1,000 in the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say first look at taking care, putting first things first, right?
Okay.
So if can you pay your bills without using credit cards?
Mm.
Do you have at least $1,000 set aside for an emergency?
Mm.
If you don't have those two things, and I'm telling you that you need to chill on the travel for a little bit.
Mm.
All right, get your
Yeah.
emergency funds up to at least $1,000, and make sure that you're able to pay your bills without using your credit card.
Mm.
So how do you do that? The first thing you need now, that's not where you stop with your emergency funds. You do want to continue building emergency funds until you're able to have 6 to 9 months, but
Mm-hmm.
you can start to travel while you're building your 6 to 9 month emergency fund.
Mm.
But you shouldn't be going nowhere if you don't have $400 to cover an emergency.
Mm.
So get your emergency savings up to at least $1,000,
Yep.
and make sure that you can pay your bills without using credit cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so, people have all these fancy ways of budgeting. There's only two ways right now. The only two ways is either to cut some stuff out of your budget that maybe you are spending more than you need to, or
Mm.
make more money. And those two things, that's it. Is just look at your budget and see, well, where am I overspending? How many subscriptions do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Do you need to have subscription to Netflix, Hulu, Prime, Paramount, HBO Max? Right? No,
Yeah.
what you really should be doing is maybe reading a bit more about how to build your wealth mindset, and maybe cut those four subscriptions down to maybe one. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
don't watch TV. I'm just saying that we're trying to live in the abundant space, and so we're going to
Mm-hmm.
need to take some time to shift our mindset, right? And so um look at where you may be able to reduce spending, and then use that extra money to put into your emergency fund, right? And then start to think about how you can strategically eliminate debt. Okay. And looking at ways to make more money. Like I would say, like, debt is like a disease that needs to be dealt with immediately. You have to attack it because it will seep into all areas of your life. It can affect your relationships, but at the very end, the bottom line is that it reduces your net worth. Okay. So you do need to be very aggressive with debt. Now, am I saying that you can't travel while you have debt? No, I'm not saying that, but I am saying that you shouldn't be paying for your trips with credit cards. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not saying that, if you buy a flight on Expedia, yeah, you use your credit card to pay for it, but you already know that you have the money for the flight to pay that card when it's time to pay.
Right.
Or you just use a debit card.
Yeah.
Right? So making sure, putting first things first, reducing your spending, and then think about ways it doesn't, making more money can be fun. Like, do you have a skill that you can monetize? Are you good at, like, making things with your hands? Yo, take that and start selling it on Etsy. Do you have like a voice for radio? Can you start doing like audiobook readings? Can you monetize skills, or maybe just get into like the shared economy, right? Delivering food through Uber Eats, DoorDash, Instacart. These are ways that you can make extra money. And I'll say that, depending on your debt situation, you should use that money to eliminate debt, but you can also reward yourself, right? It's like, I'm going to take, 20% of this money and I'm going to put it aside for a trip. Because if that's what you value and this is what brings you joy, life is happening. You are not promised next year, next month. And so I do think that we need to build in the things that we love and enjoy. And for me, yes, that travel is it. And so I prioritize that, but I also want to make sure that I'm responsible in the way that I'm stewarding all of the money that I have. I would say, if you're in a good place and you're paying off your credit card bills every month, then go ahead and, leverage the power of those travel credit cards. But it's really about prioritizing the things that are most important. After your bills are taken care of, you have your emergency savings, and you are not using credit cards to pay your bills, then I think you can start thinking about, okay, let me see how I can be intentional about putting money aside for my next trip.
Okay. And it's great that we have so many tools. It kind of diversify people's knowledge about money because, like you said, we're taught that you go to school, you get a job. So we're only thinking about the job being the only way to survive, and it's make or break. And we all know that a job is not guaranteed, even if it's union.
Didn't we learn that this past few weeks? All these federal workers, the most secure of jobs, okay, have been eliminated. So I've always said this, that there is no such thing as a secure job.
Nope.
The most secure job is the one that you create for yourself.
That's right. So they learned at will what at will meant this year for sure. And like diversifying the ways of creating abundance and financial peace will help you to pivot, because you could be able to afford something today, but you don't know what life gives you, right? You have to prepare for also those situations. So if you can learn that, listeners, watchers, from young, even if you haven't experienced it yet, just to start to think about those scenarios like, okay, if this was to ever happen to me, God forbid, but am I prepared? Do I have preparations? Am I starting to think about how to even diversify my income where I'm more mindful of what I'm cutting, and also seeing how I can grow so that when I get to that point, something may happen. I already have that mindset that I'm not going to be broke. That is just not for me. And I put situations in place where it won't be for me. And also, more than just bills, I'm a traveler. If you value that, if you're listening, watching, I'm pretty sure you value travel. So to put that into your life and make it be a reality as opposed to a fantasy they just see on social media, it's very crucial to grow in your financial health for sure. Um, but thank you so much for this main conversation. Before we close on, and make sure you take notes. Listen to this episode again and again if you need to, because it was heavy, but you're going to need that throughout your entire life, always. So come back to it at any stage. But main conversation was great. Before I close, any parting wisdom that you want to give to our listeners and watchers?
I would say, and you kind of brought this up just now, like you don't, I know we're talking about saving for travel, but just in general, um, life is always going to throw you a curveball.
Hmm.
It's if it just that's just life. And so you don't need a reason to save. You should just be saving
Hmm.
because you just never know when a curveball is going to come and hit you, and then you don't want that to knock you off your plan, right? So if you have a plan, you've decided, hey, this is what I define as success. This is how I'm going to invest my money so I reach that space. Um I don't want anything throwing me off. And
Hmm.
so you're going to make sure that you're ready for any kind of emergency.
Hmm.
So prioritize savings. And I would say there's this quote from one of my favorite books. I mentioned it, The Psychology of Money, and it
Hmm.
really helped influence my why. I would say confirm my why. I feel like
Hmm.
I already had this why, but when I read it, the way he said it, I was like, yes, this is it. I want to share this with you all.
Okay, ready.
And it's in The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and says use money to gain control over your time, because
Hmm.
not having control over your time is such a powerful and universal drag on happiness. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with who you want, for as long as you want to, pays the highest dividend that exists in finance.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Think about
That's
if you could travel the world for a year, for as long as you want. You're like, I'm going
mm,
to go on a around the world tour for 12 months because you have gotten your finances in order so you could do what you want, when you want, for as long as you want, with whoever you want. That's how I want to travel.
mm. And the best part is that it's not tied to age. There's some
No.
younger people that had that mindset and they have traveled more than I thought I can ever at this age. I'm not telling my age, but I'm still young. But and then there's adults that are still struggling with that
Yeah.
same capacity of like, can't even travel a year, um,
Mm.
and do what I want. Even
Yeah.
just that, it's like
Yeah.
powerful to even think of. But of course, the younger the better, because that, like you said, it shapes your mindset on life in general. So,
Yeah.
but thank you for those parting wisdoms and this main conversation. It was very fruitful. I hope you gathered everything from it. And if you have not, listen again and again, of course, because life can throw you a curveball. But
Yes.
if you stay ready, you don't have to be ready.
Ready.
That's right. And we're going to close the main conversation here. When we come back, I'm going to give Jonelle an opportunity to share how you can connect with her if you have any more questions or requests. And we'll play a little game because we love games and other closing remarks. So, we're back once again, guys, to Young Black Travelers. We had an amazing, amazing conversation on how you, as a traveler, should be thinking about money in general and also just the ways to start orchestrating your travel and supporting it in a way that's not only you getting it, but you can maintain it, right? So thank you, Janelle, for the financial choice of Generation Wealth for sharing such wise words for our listeners and our watchers. So, if anyone wants to connect with you, or learn more about generation wealth, or seek your services, how can they contact you?
Yeah, you can go to our website, which is generationwealth.org. You can also email me, Jonelle, my first name, Jonelle, at generationwealth.org. And my Instagram handle is generation.wealth. That's Instagram, Generation Wealth's page, and then my personal page, which probably if you want to like reach me, I would say email is best, but you can DM me on my personal page, which is JROCKES World, J-Rock's World, and that's my handle for my personal Instagram page.
Okay. All right. So you got options. So
Yeah.
utilize them.
Yes.
And thank you for sharing. So, like I said, we like games. So we're going to play a game.
Okay.
It's called Which Country. So I'll give a list of for each topic, and you'll let me know which country. You said 25 plus countries you traveled to, correct? So you got a good list. I think you could do it. So I just
All
get
right.
the topic, and you'll let me know which country or countries um,
Okay.
would apply to be the best for
All
each
right.
topic. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, if someone wants a eat, pray, love experience, and for
Mm.
context, if anyone has not watched that movie yet, pause, watch the movie, then come back to this, because that is a very powerful story. Someone who I think went through a loss,
Mm-hmm.
and they traveled, and each country they've been to, they had eat, they prayed here, and they found love somewhere else. So that's a gist. It's a way of finding yourself as a traveler, to better your experiences in life. So context there. So if someone wants that eat, pray, love experience, what country or countries would be best for that?
Okay. For eating, I would say, and this is hard because let me just preface this by saying that I think the Caribbean has the best food in the world,
Okay,
period.
fair
But
enough.
I'm gonna choose a country, and I would say for me, for food, it's a tie between Trinidad and Jamaica.
Okay.
Jamaica
Oof.
actually straddles two categories.
Okay.
Whenever I go to these two countries, I go to the supermarkets and I buy all kinds of ingredients to bring back home so that I can cook.
Mm.
So I think the food for me is just, it's delicious, it's healing, it's just, you can taste the love.
Mm.
So I love Trinidadian and Jamaican food.
Okay.
For spiritual growth or a spiritual experience, the two places I've had the most profound spiritual experiences are in Jamaica and in Israel.
Wow.
In Jamaica, I've had just just being, I think, in by the ocean, any water is healing for me.
Mm-hmm.
But Jamaica, I did a plant medicine experience and
Mm.
experienced it was a catalyst to a tremendous healing that I experienced in my body.
Wow.
And Israel, I got baptized in the
Oh
Jordan.
wow,
I
you did
walked the
it.
streets. Yeah,
Love
I
it.
did, walk
Love
the
it.
streets that Jesus walked.
Oh,
So
I
it
want to
was
do
it was
that one day, but
it was
that must
really
have been
beautiful.
amazing.
And for romance, hands down, Venice. Venice is
Okay.
just, yeah.
Okay. So if you want to eat, pray, love experience, those are the countries. Explore them. So for scenic landscapes, which country or countries are the best for that?
Oh, I know. I like scenic landscapes, Cape Town, hands down.
Okay.
Cape Town,
Okay.
South Africa. Yeah,
That's easy because I seen
easy.
pictures. I'm like, yeah, it's Cape Town. Everywhere, it's
It's beautiful.
just like
Everywhere,
everywhere.
everywhere.
You
You
turn
go up to
around, it's
Table
like, wow.
Mountain, it's
Hmm.
just breathtaking. Yeah.
That's easy. That was too easy. So,
Hmm.
okay, for shopping, right? What would be the best country or I'm gonna say country or countries because I know different countries bring different things. So I'll be fair to say best countries for shopping.
Okay. So I would say, first of all, like I was a fashion major. in school.
Okay.
So I love shopping. And for me, whenever I go to Italy, I go with an empty suitcase.
Mm,
And I go to the outlets in Italy and I clean up. Like the
mm,
last time I went, I got a pair of Prada sneakers in
mm.
collaboration with Adidas for 100 euros.
Wow. Wow.
I got Gucci scarf for like $80.
Nice.
Um, I mean, like I get lots of shoes, lots of bags, lots of clothes. It's just a different quality, made in Italy. It's yeah, like
Mm,
next level. And then I would say I'm also like I love flea markets in other countries.
mm,
Love them. Like especially when I go to Africa, I'm looking to see where the markets are so I can support like the local artisans. And for me, Kenya and South Africa
mm,
were both really great experiences, both in Cape Town and Joburg. But wherever I just came from Iceland the other day, and I went to a flea market and got some really great jewelry. So I
mm,
love a good flea market. Um, and for high end designer, Italy, all the way.
mm. Italy. Yeah. I know.
Yes.
People say if you go to Europe, like Italy, those places, they're like, make sure you have an empty luggage. It just makes
Hmm.
sense. The
Yep.
quality alone is just worth, the
Yes.
checking bag. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Okay. So, okay, for budget. I'm tight on since we're talking about financial health, like for a
Yeah.
budget, what would be the best country if I want to get more bang for my buck? Pretty much.
Okay. So I think honestly, this has to do with where you live. So if
Mm,
somebody's listening to this and they just happen, I don't know, to be in Australia, then what I might say may not be a budget for you. So I'm going to say this from the context of someone living in the United States.
okay.
That budget, Mexico.
Okay.
Yeah, Mexico, your dollar, you're getting anywhere from, 18 to $21 for each dollar.
Okay.
Beautiful. There's just so many beautiful places in Mexico and many different experiences. You can, have the city experience, the beach experience, the country experience, the adventure experience. Like there's just so much to do in Mexico, and you can definitely do any of those things on a budget.
Mm, okay. So location's important. 'Cause I guess I know
Yeah.
Europe, the countries are like next door. So of
Oh
course
yeah.
that's different. That's a
Yeah.
different flex. Europeans, you got flex.
Exactly.
But Americans, if you're in America, Mexico is
Yeah.
the pick for the budget. Okay. So the last one. If any of those countries, the best country for out of your 25, right?
Mm.
The most unique experience. Which country did that come from?
It just happened like 3 weeks ago. I went to
Okay.
Iceland.
Okay. What
And
made it
Iceland,
what was the
whew,
unique experience in Iceland?
oh my goodness. Well, I will say it's the juxtaposition of fire. They call it the island of fire and ice.
Mhm.
And so you'll see like, these glaciers, and then you'll see like, the mountains and such, or the little like sea moss hills, and they're like covered in snow. But
Mhm.
then there's steam like rising from the ground because of the volcanic action that's going on underground.
Mhm.
That's fascinating to me. You know, places like the Blue Lagoon.
Mhm.
I've never experienced anything like that. The water is hot. The steam from the surrounding volcanoes is, has a steam rising up, and the water is like super hot. It's
Mhm.
unbelievable.
Wow.
And I say I went because I went in the winter. They have, the extended hours of night time.
Mm.
So waking up at 9 in the morning and it's still dark. Like I
Wow.
was like, what? This is crazy. And of course, the Northern Lights.
Mhm.
Like it's an experience that you just definitely should have. Yeah, Iceland
Okay,
for
noted.
sure.
Noted.
Yeah.
I have to go to Iceland. I know they are a wonder in of itself. So thank you for sharing that. So that's it for the game. See, you
Ah,
you,
okay,
you
that's
passed.
fun.
You passed the exam. You passed. Ow. Uh, and we're gonna just close this episode on this note. And thank you so much for just gracing us with your wisdom and your knowledge on how someone as a traveler can Be financially responsible. We teach about social responsibility as a traveler, but financial responsibility is, if it's not the same, as higher, right? So thank you for imparting that knowledge and empowering our listeners and watchers to do something about it. And also follow us for more of these great episodes on our social medias. Um, we're on Facebook, Young Black Travelers. We're on TikTok, Young Black Travelers. We're on Instagram, Young Black Travelers blog, Threads, Young Black Travelers blog. And of course, we have our website with our blog, these podcasts, and other events on youngblacktravelers.com. So as you're traveling, also be aware still, take good course of action, be smart, and just have good practices wherever you go, especially with your finances, okay? And yep. So thank you again, Jonelle. She is from Generation Wealth. Check her out. Thank you so much
Thank you.
for having this conversation with me, and happy travels, everyone.